Hey! Yeah, no, I just made it. Yeah, it took me a little while to get in. There's a lot of traffic over here. No. It's really far in, and it's pretty far
We
away
all
from
have
anything in
moments where we
society.
wish we could get away from it
No,
all.
I mean, just everything is nice. But
Time alone can be good for the psyche. A chance to recharge, collect one's thoughts, and relax before rejoining the stress of our modern society. However, life is best lived in moderation. Too much of anything, even something generally seen as good, can be a bad thing.
yeah, no. I'm here. Just there's something wrong with the faucet. It's got a leak or something like that. Yeah, I saw the weather report. It's alright though. I should be gone before anything gets too bad.
Solitude, in particular, is dangerous for us humans. Not just because you are far from help should an accident occur. No. Terrifyingly, the danger you most need to look out for when it's just me, myself, and I is from within. You may think your brain is there to make sense of the world, to help you, and for the most part it is. But it can turn on you. And unlike a stranger wishing to do you harm, or some kind of natural disaster, it knows just what you are scared of. And in circumstances where your mind has no other stimuli to capture its attention, you won't like what it does with that information. We'd all like to believe that we can trust our brains, right? I mean, who can you trust if not yourself? We trust our brains to give us an accurate enough idea of what's going on around us every second of every day. Now, on this channel, I've talked about instances and cases where the brain gets things wrong, but truthfully, these cases are either infrequent enough or minor enough to not really make any great impact on how we perceive the world. Our minds are nothing less than a marvel, one that we to this day don't even fully understand. Millions of years of evolution have led us to being able to handle the nearly limitless amount of stimuli that hit us all the time, without even really having to think about it. But what happens when you don't get that stimuli? We're wired to be able to receive constant input, keeping our brains busy and happy, so long as they don't get overloaded, of course. That being said, however, not taking in enough information can be just as bad, if not worse, than too much. Think about it. Back to a time when you were all alone. Maybe you're the sole closing shift for a business, or your family has gone out for the night and for whatever reason, you were left behind. Or you just simply live alone, in the quiet, deathly still of the night. You hear it, don't you? You think it would be completely quiet, but it's not. You can almost hear the quiet. You can't help but focus on it. You get restless. Your mind wanders, hearing all the little noises, the cracks and pops that you normally never notice during the day. Sounds that are, in reality, quite low in decibel, but in that moment, seem like they could shatter a window. Then, maybe, as you try to convince yourself that it's all just in your head, You even begin to see things out of the corner of your eye, only to realize your mind was just playing tricks on you. This isn't specific to any one person. These are shared experiences amongst the human race as a whole. It's what happens when your brain has nothing to focus on. In those cases, you can find the smallest, most insignificant thing and amplify it tenfold. And if it really can't find anything, your mind is not above inventing something to focus on. That's just the tip of the iceberg, though. That's just what happens when you're alone for a few hours. Imagine a few days, a few weeks. Imagine 25 years. Being alone in this condition for too long can drive one insane. A madness that is both observable and defined. A madness often called cabin fever. Cabin fever is a phenomenon in which a person is pushed into a state of extreme irritability and delusion, brought on by simply being trapped in isolation. This isolation can come from a multitude of different scenarios. It's been observed in mariners aboard submarines for long periods, kidnapping victims, and individuals trapped in isolated vacation destinations.
Residents of the county woke up to a whopping 5 feet of snow this morning, a record-setting amount like we haven't seen in decades. Residents are being asked to stay in their homes. Roads are completely unusable right now, and don't be surprised if cell towers and the internet get knocked out completely.
However, one area we can most commonly see cabin fever claiming its victims is in the American prison and health systems. Solitary confinement is a correctional practice in which the most unruly or violent offenders are kept within cramped and isolated conditions, away from the rest of the prison or institution population. Individuals sentenced to solitary confinement are often kept there for days or even weeks at a time, in many cases only being allowed to leave their cell to shower. These isolated circumstances have been studied and known to cause severe symptoms of cabin fever. In 2006, psychiatrist Stuart Gracian published a study titled Psychiatric Effects of Solitary Confinement, a research paper in which he traveled to the maximum security state penitentiary in Waypool, Massachusetts, to interview its inmates going through solitary confinement. In his research, he found that cabin fever has a unique set of ailments. You see, the combination of effects of the condition are not really seen in any other disorder. For cabin fever puts the victim in a state of paradox. A person suffering from cabin fever experiences both an inability to focus in a state of hyperfocus, unable to switch their attention from stimuli to stimuli. Also, a constant feeling of sleepiness, while being unable to achieve any meaningful sleep. This set of factors results in the inmates encountering something not too dissimilar from delirium. I briefly talked about delirium in my last video. It's an extreme state of confusion that brings with it anxiety, paranoia, and uncontrollable hallucinations. For context, this video attributed delirium to one of the things that can cause people to be visited by the Hat Man, and the accounts from the prisoners of Walpole Penitentiary seem to point exactly to severe cases of delirium. Many tell of visual and auditory hallucinations, panic attacks, issues with focus and memory, paranoia, and thoughts of extreme violence.
You get sensitive to the noise. The plumbing system. Someone in the tier above me pushes the button on the faucet. It's too loud. It gets on your nerves. I can't stand it. I start to holler. It's tense. Think of torturing and killing the gods. It lasts a couple of hours. I can't stop it. It bothers me. Picture throwing a guard in lime. Eats away at his skin, his flesh, to torture him. I try to block it out, but I can't. I suspect they're putting drugs in my food. They're putting drugs in my cell. The reverend, the priest, even you. You're all in cahoots in the Get Straight program.
These delusions can be so severe, they may even be the basis behind the ghost stories of one of America's reportedly most haunted destinations, Alcatraz. Alcatraz is a well-known prison here in the States, famous for being supposedly impossible to escape from. In its 29 years of operation, only 2 prisoners were ever said to have escaped. And even so, it's not quite certain whether they survived the venture. It now sits as a reportedly haunted tourist attraction. The most active with ghostly activity is Cell Block D. There are accounts of hauntings even during its operation in this wing of the prison. Inmates and guards alike would tell of seeing apparitions and hearing disembodied voices. And there's even a popular story of a prisoner seeing a pair of floating eyes in his cell, only to be found dead the next morning. As scary as that sounds, do you know what Cell Block D was used for at Alcatraz? It was their solitary confinement wing. I can't necessarily prove it, but I feel confident in saying that extreme cases of cabin fever are likely responsible for some of the US's most famous ghost stories. To further this point, the negative effects of solitary confinement aren't even a new consideration. We've known how detrimental this correction technique is since at least the late 1800s. On March 3rd, 1890, the United States made a surprising ruling in the case of James J. Medley, a man convicted of murdering his wife. The sentencing was to be carried out as such. He was to spend a month in prison. After such time had passed, he was to be executed for his crime. However, something interesting happened. At the time of his sentencing, new legislation passed between his wife's murder, and when Medley was convicted, he wouldn't just have to spend a month in jail before his corporal punishment. He was going to be staying that month in solitary confinement. Medley appealed this in court, arguing that solitary before execution was far too cruel a punishment for his crimes. The Supreme Court was then faced with a difficult decision. If they did not sentence Medley under the new legislation, they would not be able to convict him at all. The decision was between sending him to a month in solitary or knowingly let him get away with murder. Armed with what was known about the effects of prolonged isolation, even back then, they made the decision. James J. Medley walked away a free man. Given how serious cabin fever and the negative effects of solitary confinement are, it's easy to forget that the practice wasn't only instituted as a punishment, it was first introduced as a cure. Penitentiary systems were first introduced in Philadelphia. They were thought up as a more humane way to treat and care for those with mental impairments. Solitary confinement was a method of treatment, a way to give a person time to think and reflect, as well as keep them away from the rest of the institution population, keeping everyone safer as a result. The problem is, as you may now have guessed, solitary confinement doesn't make things better. It makes things worse. Those undergoing solitary confinement even reported developing mental issues that were never there before undergoing the treatment. That's because prolonged isolation doesn't just affect you in the moment, it affects you long term. Back in Walpole, many inmates reported having severe social anxiety after being released from solitary confinement, a fact that would often lead them to carrying out an action that would land them right back in solitary. Not only that, but your neurons and brain activity physically shrink the longer you stay sectioned off from the rest of society. Now, that fact comes from a study in which this phenomenon was observed in mice. However, we have a prime example of the same thing happening to a human. Blanche Monnier was a woman born into a wealthy family of high social standing. She was well known for her beauty across France. When she turned 27, she fell in love with Victor Camiel, a man that Blanche's mother, Louise Monnier, did not approve of. Victor, in the eyes of Mrs. Monnier, was not of a high enough nobility deserving of her daughter. Blanche didn't care. She was going to go against her mother's wishes and marry the man she loved regardless. Her mother responded to her daughter's wishes by locking her in a small, dark room, acting like she had disappeared when anyone inquired about Blanche's whereabouts. It was in that room Blanche would stay for the next 25 years, never allowed to leave, not to eat, not to bathe, not even to relieve herself. She was eventually discovered May 23rd, 1901. Blanche was now 52, extremely emaciated, not the same person she was when she was locked in the room. Blanche was extremely irritable when she was found, screaming and thrashing at the police who freed her. Over time, she regained some of her cognizance, but was never the same again. She was described as being incredibly childlike. She was sweet, but could swing into anger and frustration very quickly. Her responses to questions were simple at their best and nonsensical at their worst. She lived out the rest of her days in a French hospital, requiring constant care. Her isolation drove her mad. Her brother reported seeing her talk to delusions, and there was writing all over the walls of the room where she was found, most of which being completely incomprehensible. Solitary confinement, cabin fever, isolation itself is dangerous. Not to say that time to oneself is a bad thing. We all need alone time to recharge and relax in our own company. However, we are social creatures by nature. As bad as society and the world may seem at times, we need interaction with the people in it. Interaction in of itself may be definitely scary for some, but trust me, you don't want to be faced with the alternative. So hug those close to you. Take negative interactions in stride, having the comfort of knowing that it's working towards keeping you sane. Enjoy moments to yourself when you can. Just keep in mind that when your brain needs to entertain itself, self-preservation tends to go out the window. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And thank you for watching.